Welcome, everyone. This is Joe Dagger, the host of the Business 901 podcast. With me today is Lisa Bodell. She is an award-winning author and CEO of FutureThink. As a futurist and expert on the topic of change, she serves as a global council member of the World Economic Forum and has helped thousands of senior leaders ignite innovation at Bloomberg, Pfizer, Lockheed Martin, and many others. Her new book is Why Simple Wins, and it has just been released. Lisa, thanks for joining me. I have to say, I went to Amazon to look for a few bad reviews, okay, to get some meat in my questions, and I couldn't find any. And either you have an awful lot of friends, or it's been very well received. Thanks for joining me.
No, thank you. And I'm glad you didn't find any bad reviews. That's excellent. We want to go for those 5-star reviews, which is great. Thank you for having me today.
Tell me a little bit about FutureThink and yourself, sort of that elevator speech to start out here.
Sure. So FutureThink is a company I started 20 years ago, and I have the absolute core belief that everyone has the power to innovate, but they need to know how. And I'm from the Midwest. I'm a very practical, tactical person. And after having taught innovation for many, many years, I started in advertising. I'm now a recovering ad agency person. Then I moved into starting a .com and did that whole shtick for a while. And then I started my own business, FutureThink, and the idea was help people really embrace change, right? And what I realized over the course of many years is that people have the desire to change, but they don't know how to do it. And there are big things that are holding them back. And those big things are meetings and emails. And so what I want to be able to help people do is create that space for change and innovation to happen. And simplicity was the way to really do it. So my company teaches innovation and teaches simplicity to help people really embrace change in better ways. And we are very practical at how we approach it. So no lofty PowerPoints, no big thought leadership stuff. We are very tool-based to help people get their jobs done.
Was there a moment that you had that, that aha moment that I'm going to take simplification head on? And,
yes.
And is that how it happened?
Yeah, I'll tell you how it happened, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the book too, like the irony about the book. So, I mentioned that we teach innovation and change, and about 5 years ago, myself and my trainers were getting incredibly frustrated with teaching these courses to people because the very executives, you'll like this, I'm sure you've experienced this. The very executives that were bringing us in to teach change were the very ones that were holding us back from doing it when we got there, right? Teach change, but not that much, right? Color a picture of the future, but within these lines because they wanted to control it. And, you could see the people working for them were really frustrated. They'd go, yeah, we got to learn innovation. Yeah. And so even though they were getting the training, even though they were being told to do it and being measured to do it, nothing was changing in companies, right? I mean, everyone talked about it, but little was being done. And I wanted to know why. And I started asking people a really interesting question. I said to them, what do you spend your day doing? And everyone answers the exact same way, meetings and emails. That's what they spend their day doing. And so I thought, here they're being told to innovate, but they're bogged down in meaningless work. So innovation was fine to teach, but until we simplified stuff, no one was going to get to the innovation. It was just this empty talk. So that led me to the Simplicity book. I will tell you, it is not without irony that writing a book on simplicity is the most complex thing I have ever done. Right? I mean, because it's that thing. Everyone knows it when they see it, and they want to experience it. They know how it feels, but they can't really define it. They're not really sure what it is or in service of what, except making things easier. So, doing the research on this book, which, I know we'll want to get into, so I'll just kind of kick this off. It was really easy to find information on complexity, right? I mean, your background in terms of lean, et cetera, that how things are complex, but finding stuff on simplicity is very difficult. Even the definition of it, the process for it, I mean, a lot of the processes even that people had come up with were 20-step programs. So I really wanted to take a fresh approach to it. Like, think of this as a simpler way to do change management. I'll tell you what's been fascinating to me is the personal response I get from people versus the professional response. People literally want to hug me like a therapist when I talk to them about simplification, right? Because it's really personal. They experience it every day. It sucks up their time. It drains their energy and emotion. And if someone can help them simplify, it's personal because it's so satisfying to them. So I have great, great hope for this book. I think it's going to touch people in many ways.
It's a great book and one of the better ones I've read on simplification. And,
Thank you.
And the reason for it is the practicality of it.
Yes. Yes. Practicality is sexy again. Don't you love that?
I mean, yeah, isn't that great?
Yeah.
It's
and
like,
all the people listening here, I mean, I love what you told me before we started today. You said this audience is really practical, and I just wanted to burst out and hug you for that. I mean, it's amazing, because for so long you go out and you hear people with these lofty speeches and these 40,000 foot thought leadership stuff. You know what? People don't have time for that anymore. They need to get stuff done. So practical is sexy again, because speed, it's about speed, not scale anymore. And being practical and getting stuff done, that's where the speed comes from. So these listeners, right, these are the people that get it done. So I'm happy to be here and talk to them.
Well, there is that idea all the way back from Covey, starting out to make things, a list and, getting things done and all that stuff. But why do we make things complex to begin with? Let's just start at the beginning, right?
Well, all right, so here's the irony for me, and I'd love to know what you think and the listeners think. The irony about complexity is, for most people, right, in most instances, it's done completely unintentionally. Really, I mean, most people, I believe, are good, and they want to solve a problem, launch a product, try something new, but because we lack the time or the space to do it, the easiest thing is for us just to do it within the construct we already have. Like, we add a process to an existing process. We add technology or a function to what already exists, and so we create the beast that we become a slave to. So it's really unintentional, but complexity comes from a lot of things. It's regulation, and you can't avoid that. It's scale, and that's where organizational complexity comes in. It's technology, right? Someone asked me recently, has technology helped us or hurt us? And the answer is yes, for sure. And I will say the final thing and biggest thing that causes complexity, though, is human behavior. It really comes down to risk, fear, power, and control. And that drives all the reasons why we put these complex things like more reports, more meetings, more emails in place. And if we can get a better handle on the behavioral complexities, I think we can get rid of some of these individual and organizational complexities.
Well, you sort of put the responsibility on leadership, okay? You even challenge the golden rule, okay?
Yeah, I did. What did you think of that, the golden rule?
I thought that was great. Could you tell the audience and maybe expand on that just a little?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So the golden rule is something that came up, believe it or not, near the very end of writing this book. And we wrote that leadership chapter last because we wanted to explore all the tools and practicalities and things we could do. And what we realized was, individuals can do lots of little tactical things, but until the leaders really change the behavior, right, and make simplification their new operating system, make it a culture, and okay the behavioral change, it won't stick. So leaders have to have a golden rule of do unto others with your time how you want them to use your time. Because think about this, why do we get so mad, right, when people waste our money? Why don't we get the same level of upset when people waste our time, right? We can't get it back. I mean, you can get more money, but you can't get more time. So why do we let people waste our time? So it's leaders' job to set the behaviors that say, this is not okay. You can't waste time like this. These are the things you're allowed to say no to. This is how decisions will be made. These are the kind of behaviors they have to structure so we have that golden rule of using each other's time how we want others to use ours.
Well, and I think that means so much because I'm going to use one example here is where people, you go to a website and you can't find out the price till you sign up for the free trial, or you have to sign up for the free trial and everything because they don't put any value in your time.
That's right.
And they try to get you to commit through time, and there's nothing that probably irritates me more is a lack of respect for my time.
So, you know what? Exactly. That's just it. Like, people are willing to pay a premium if you simplify it. That's the irony, right? So we have this issue, right, that we have this addiction and that we value more. We truly value more, not less. No one gets rewarded in a company for managing less people, less products, less markets, less anything. And we put our metrics in place for how we promote people for doing more. And unfortunately, that creates our value is about the more we do. And if we do less, we won't be valued. We'll be fired. So we have to fix this irony. right? In terms of less, but also too about our time. It's how do we actually get people comfortable with doing less things and using our time differently? That comes from the leadership perspective. And that's where that was one of my favorite chapters in the book, by the way.
Can we make simplification a 2017 initiative? I mean, can a leader get away with putting something like that in the forefront, or just does it have to grow organically?
No, the answer is yes, they absolutely can, and they should. There are many, many companies right now that have simplification. They purposefully made simplification a strategic pillar of their company. In fact, some have replaced the word innovation as a strategic pillar and replaced it with simplification. There are companies like P&G, GE, Altria, Merck. All these companies have thoughtfully and purposely said to people, simplification is our operating system, and we have people and metrics in place to actually make it happen. So you're going to start hearing about people that have chief simplification officers in place, that have simplification teams in place, and they have simplification initiatives. Like, for example, Merck in one of their divisions said, we are only going to focus on simplifying meetings for the next 6 months. You have groups within P&G that said, we are going to simplify our engineering process for the next 6 months. They are purposeful about it because they know it's not just efficiency, but it improves customer loyalty and it improves employee retention. So there are many benefits. I fully encourage leaders to be on the cutting edge of this.
Now, tie this into technology. I mean, when I think of simplification, okay, we think of the, like you said, the meetings and the emails. But, when I go to work with another company, because I do a lot of freelance type work and things like that, it's not uncommon for me to get signed up to 8 different accounts. Okay.
Well, so part of that, it's tech and it's process too, right? Is that how you experience it?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for the listeners here, one of it is analyzing the process, right? I think that's a definite part of it. But I think part of the problem with simplification is breaking it down into parts. We tend to look at problems in terms of they're too big, and breaking it down into parts can get people to be able to tackle things and their assumptions, you know this very well, around each of those parts so we can challenge them and we can change them. I think the main thing with simplification as an operating principle is getting people comfortable with less, because that allows you to start using the question, like you said, signing up for 8 accounts. First of all, is that necessary? And if the answer is no, why are you doing it? If the answer is yes, then we can figure out how to either minimize it, right? We can streamline it. We can outsource it. We can make it clearer. There are different ways that we can tackle it once we find out, is it even necessary in the first place? So once we actually define, is it necessary and valuable, then there's ways that we can tackle it from a simplification standpoint.
Okay, well, because I've even seen an industry built out of organizing the communication tools, right?
Sure.
Like Slack and different things. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's interesting about Slack, and it's, I'm interested to see where that goes too, which is now we have so many different ways that we can communicate. It's almost like with marketing too, and social media. People feel like, why be on one platform when you can be on 80 of them? Right? Same thing with marketing. Why do it one way when you can do it 80 ways? And I think what we have to get comfortable with, which is what are the most valuable ways to do it, right? Get comfortable with less versus more so we can spend our time in better ways. So one thing on time management, I would say a lot of people are looking to manage their time better. I'm more focused on what's the work you should be spending your time on in the first place.
Lean is an idea that you're not lean unless you're visual. And how much does visual thinking, visual things play into simplification?
I think a lot. The reason I like when you talk about this with lean or design thinking, for example, when you visualize something, people are better able to understand it, right? Because I think we've become very numb to jargon and words, and we almost don't even pay attention to it anymore. So if you help people draw out a process, it gets them to think differently, right? It ignites different parts of their brain. It allows them to break things down into parts, I think, more easily as well. So we love to have people actually draw the process out, right? Rather than just explain the process or write it down. So I think the visualization part can play a huge, huge role in simplification.
Yeah, let me talk about the book here a little bit. We've stayed off of that. We're just talking about simplification. We could probably talk hours about that. But
okay.
Is the book a checklist type thing? Is there a process, or is it a closet tamers type thing? Put it here, put it here. What is it? Tell me what's in it.
It's so funny because everyone said you're like the Marie Kondo of business, who wrote the book, right, about it was more of a closet organizing type of simplification. So to me, I wrote this book for leaders, but also for individuals that wanted to get stuff done. And the idea was there is a process in terms of how you go about simplifying, but then there's also very specific tactics you can start to use. In fact, there's a whole chapter dedicated to tools for simplifying so people can actually start making it happen, right? I mean, the idea is get going right now. So the process to me is, first, you have to define what you want simplification to do for your company, because some people view it only as an efficiency effort, but I view it as a cultural and ethical one. And we can talk a little bit about that. But defining what it is and where it'll take you is very important, because people need a vision and they need clarity. The second thing is defining it. And this is where most companies fall down. And we spent a lot of time defining simplification in the book, because if you ask people to define simplification, very few of them can give you a concise answer. That's a problem. So we spend a lot of time helping people understand the definition of simplicity, which is minimizing, understanding, repeating, and making it accessible, by the way. Most people think simplification is just minimizing, and it's a little bit more than that. And then after that, we have people talk about the behaviors or the code of conduct that we want them to create for themselves and for their team, because that gives permission and it makes people agree to that golden rule of how we'll use each other's time, right? And then finally, we give them the tactics and the tools. How do you actually kill complexity? How do you teach them how to kill stupid rules? How do you get them to ask killer questions so they understand how to make things simpler, how to make them more valuable, how to make them more minimal? And it goes on and on. So it's this combination of the theory and the definition, and then a whole section devoted just to the tools and tactics to start getting things done right now. And they're very quick win things they can do, like killing stupid rules, for example. That's a quick win people can do within an hour coming right out of this podcast.
Yeah, and what I loved about your book is that you did provide that definition. A lean guy, right? I want to define the current state, okay, yep, where I'm at. And you allow for that, but then you bring one of those great lean words in there, is gap, okay? Is you look at a gap and how to go from here to there. And,
right,
from what to what by when. And so many of us forget that that's something that we have to do, right?
Yeah, and what I love about what you said, the gap for me is between mundane and meaningful. And so that's very lofty and pithy. But the idea is, I mean, think about this. People say that they spend their time doing mundane stuff, right? And they wish they could do meaningful things. Well, here's the thing as a leader, and I mean this well for leaders when I wrote this book. I know their challenge is to get people to stop doing mundane work, or for leaders to stop making them do mundane work. But also it's helping them define what meaningful work is, because most people can't tell you what that means. So we have people, when they start, I'll tell you one exercise I love, to draw a T-chart. And on the left-hand side, we say, tell us what you spend your day doing. And you have to let them do this in private, by the way, because if you have them do it in public, they'll fill their things with what makes them look good, right? Everyone says they do, valuable things all day, but they don't. They're drowning in meetings and emails and reports. So you have them write down all the things that they spend their time doing. Then you ask them to circle the things that they think really are valuable in terms of individual fulfillment or driving the business forward. And what they find is they circle very few things. And of the things that are circled, that helps them define what is so valuable about them. What makes valuable work? Why aren't you spending more time on those things? Right, there's the gap. And then on the right-hand column, we say, what do you wish you were spending your time on? So we start to define, what do you wish for? What's meaningful? What holds them back is the gap. And then how can we help them eliminate the things that they didn't circle to get to that right-hand column? The whole book is about subtracting. It's a subtractive process, not an additive. And that's very cathartic for people.
Yeah, and I think that's great, and especially in my world of sales and marketing, because so many of us always, we jump into what we're going to do in the future. But if you do that, what you just described, it's a great way to sit there and talk to your salespeople. What a great conversation for a sales manager to have, right?
Yeah, well, people love to-do lists. My question is, what's on the list? To-do lists are great, and I'm sure I am really good at making a list. I bet everyone on this podcast is too, and can check off a list like nobody's business, right? But I don't know, at the end of the day, did you get anything done that really moved the needle forward? I mean, that's the problem. That's the cycle and this complexity trap that we get into is, I'm doing all this work. Why don't I feel like I'm getting anything done? Right? That's a very compelling thing to think about. And it's because you're doing mundane stuff, not meaningful. So we have to define, well, individually, as well as for our team or a business, what is meaningful work and what is holding us back from getting to it. And that's what the tools are designed to do. Get rid of the stuff that's not working so you make the space for things that are meaningful.
Can I go too far with simplification?
Yeah.
Can I make it too simple? I mean, Edison had a saying like that, or Einstein, I forget who.
Right. Make it so but simpler and nothing more, and not anything more. Well, what's interesting about simplification when we were doing the definition, right? This was, and by the way, that was one of the hardest things to do in the book, because I had a lot of people define simplicity, and it was so complex, it made me want to just bang my head against a table. So the idea of MURA, M-U-R-A, minimal, understandable, repeatable, accessible, that's your core definition. But the problem is people then, they minimize things too much, or they make things so repeatable there's no room for it to have any genius left in it. So my example I use is IKEA instructions, right? That's a great example of, they're so simple they need to come with marriage counseling. There's no way you're not going to have a fight after you get an IKEA instruction book, because it's so simple you can't even understand it. You know, another example I give is there's a lot of lawyers that want to get their contracts down. GE did this. They want to get their contracts down from 100 pages to 1. Well, that's a noble cause, right? Be extreme about it. Get it down to 1 page. The problem is when they get it down to 1 page, they have to spend so much time explaining it that they might as well have only got it down to 10 pages, which still is a 90% improvement, right? And it's understandable for people versus the 1 page. So you can overdo it. It's knowing your boundaries.
Most of us, when we think about simple, okay, you know, we think about simplifying things in organizations, making it easier and stuff, but it really needs to be a mindset, kind of that cultural thing you're talking about, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And it's making bold choices. It's like when the Tesco CEO said, the big thing was more. Within having so many SKUs in your store, they have so much stuff, right? It's like when you go to Costco, they have so many things. And what they found was they could actually cut their products down in some of their aisles by more than 50%, and they didn't lose a thing. In fact, they got more customers as a result. So this was a very bold choice to be focused, right? That's a cultural thing. I loved the story with Southwest when we were doing research, where there was a customer that complained that they wrote on the plane and they said, there's no first class, I didn't have a hot meal, I didn't get to, and a bunch of other things. And the CEO finally wrote back and said, we'll miss having you as a customer. That's not what we do. We didn't promise you first class. We didn't promise you to have these excellent meals. Fly another airline. We're here to be efficient and get people on and off the plane. So, it takes a bold leader to be focused, right, and stick to simplification, and they will be rewarded for it, because customers will come to you for what you're offering, right? Rather than trying to offer everything, they come to you for the one thing that they know that you're good at. And Southwest, that story is a good example.
When Steve Jobs came back at Apple, I mean, they were never first at anything. Everybody talks how innovative they were. I mean, they weren't the first MP3 player, the first, thing. But what I always was amazed about them is their ability to say no, and you could lay all their products on a kitchen table, and everybody could name what they did and what they didn't, even non-Apple users, okay? And
right. Well,
they were a little bit successful, right?
A little. I'd say a little. You're right. Well, what I love about what you just said is this is an example where culturally, and it comes from the leader, right, that it's okay to say no. And that's really hard for people because they want to say no, for example, to meetings. But then they're upset when they're not included, right? So we have to get comfortable with the leaders exemplifying the behavior of, hey, I don't feel like I need to go to that meeting. Hey, I don't think you need to be included there because you can use your time differently. Hey, do you really need to focus on that one zombie project that seems to go on forever, but we never have the guts to kill? So we need to get in this comfort zone of what are the behaviors that we want our culture to stand for. Apple's saying no, like that story of Jobs always asking Joni Ivey, hey, what did you say no to today? What a great question, right? So what's that kind of question that you're going to have within your company? Like, For example, S&P had this thing of how many decisions did you make without me today? What a great question, right?
Sure.
So that allows people to say you're empowered to make a decision. How many have you made without me? So you know that I'm looking for you to do that. And I'd love for people on the podcast here to think about, okay, what's the question you're going to ask people that's going to drive your culture in terms of simplification?
So simple is really a competitive advantage.
Very much so. In fact, I believe that simplicity is going to be the competitive advantage of our time. It has to become our new operating system. And it's really easy to understand why, right? It's number one, the future or successful businesses are going to be based on speed, not scale. In fact, scale inhibits, right? It creates complexity, not simplicity most of the time. So you need speed. And the only way you're going to do that is to get rid of the things that aren't working. Also, it's a skill that's available to us all. Every individual on your team has the capacity to simplify. You as a leader need to give them the permission and even the mandate to do it. So here it is. Everyone has it. Activate it. It's a competitive advantage. Start using it against your competition. And there's really simple ways to get it started. So I really believe people that operate with simplicity are going to be the ones that are successful in the future.
And I want to tell the listeners that the book is not just for leaders, okay? It is for anyone within the organization. You can pull from it just really I mean, an actual sales guy could pull from it and learn a lot.
Yeah, even the tactics, one of the most popular tools in the book is there's 50 tactics to start simplifying. And I love that because we spend all this other time, right, on these bigger tools about killing complexity and the metrics for simplification. But what's the one everyone turns to every time? The tactics to simplify, because they're the little things like no scroll emails, writing in the subject line NNTR, no need to respond, so people don't fill your inbox with junk and reply alls. There's little things that people can do to start the habit and get people comfortable with this change. Because remember, humans aren't comfortable with change. Giving them little things to show that it can matter, and then building the behaviors from there, easy fix for people to do. Any individual can do that. It doesn't have to be a leader.
What I really got a kick out of was your 5 steps to simplification. Because okay. I didn't look at it as something for myself. But I looked at it as a way of how I should be maybe treating customers. And from a sales perspective, because the awareness, the top of the funnel or whatever, it kind of looked like a sales funnel. Identify, okay? Then you prioritize which ones, okay, that I need to be calling on. Then I execute. And then as they become customers, the habit formation of getting them to use the product and everything. I said, well, she just did a basically life cycle of a customer somewhat there.
Well, thank you. I mean, I have to say that was another thing of what's the process for simplifying with awareness, identify. I mean, it's kind of like the first step in making a dream come true is to wake up, right? That's a great phrase, which is most people, they're aware there's a problem, but they're not. By the way, no one thinks they're the problem. That's the key thing with simplification. Everyone thinks everyone else is the problem. So, and my team will tell you that I'm a problem in many instances. So you have to have your own awareness of where you cause complexity, because everyone does it, and then identify where that is and start prioritizing how to tackle it. Because you can, it'd be really easy to say we're going to redo our CRM, right? Or can we just start with some basic things first? So that kind of helps you figure out what to tackle first to get the momentum going and then make it a habit. So I love that you like that.
Oh, no, I enjoyed it in that. So, I could go on, but, time is limited here. So what is upcoming for you, and what's the best way for someone to get a hold of you?
So 2 things that are upcoming. One is we just launched the toolkit that goes separately with the book. FYI, it's also on Amazon. But I really believe in the practicality, and I want to give people the tools so they can get the toolkit that comes with the book. That just launched, so we're excited about that. And then the next thing is we're launching our course that goes with it. So, people sometimes they're not self-starters. They want to have that kickstart. So we're launching these half-day, full-day programs that actually ignite the tools in the book so then people can take them back to their teams, and that'll roll out next year. You can please contact me. I am at Lisa Bodell on Twitter. Our website is futurethink.com. And you can contact me email-wise at innovate@futurethink.com. And that'll get to me, and I'm happy to answer questions all day long about simplification. I'm passionate about it.
Enjoyed the book tremendously. Like I've said earlier, it's one of the better books on simplification I've read. So I congratulate you on that.
Huge compliment, really huge compliment, because I know your background, and if I can please the folks like this, like yourself and the others on this podcast, I feel like that's a personal win. So thank you very much.
Well, this podcast will be available on the Business 901 iTunes store and the Business 901 blog site. So I would like to thank everyone for listening, and thank you, Lisa.
Thank you very much.